So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and this one intrigues me because it's a 3v3 field battle on the grassy plain, but even though it is a field battle, it is still a 3v3, and 13k frames is very, very quick, so I'd be interested to see how this match was resolved so quickly. This one was sent to be by Master Blaster, and yeah, it's you know, this is the sort of length that even for a 1v1 this would be relatively short, so we're going to get right down to brass tacks pretty quickly in this fight, I would imagine. We will start off with the blue team, starting off with Master Blaster's army, and he is of course playing as Mordor. In a match as quick as this, I'm unsurprised to see at least one Orc faction, although I do believe there is only the one, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. We've got some Númenórean Lancers, of course, a very strong Lance cavalry unit, pretty resilient, obviously. As with other Lancers, you really don't want to get them too near melee cavalry or spear cavalry, because that's really where they're not efficient at all, but their charges can be very, very devastating. Obviously hammer and anvil charges, Lancers are the best for that, very, very deadly indeed, and the Númenórean Lancers also look particularly nice as well. The Mordor variant, of course, have got the green capes, although they have got the mud all over them at the moment, which is, again, something that is being looked at. I mean, I did get a comment in the last video asking about the weather effects, and in one of J-Monster's most recent videos, he did go into that. And yes, it is going to be at the very least tweaked, if not removed. So that will be in 0.97, the fixed or the removed version. We've got a combination of Orc Maulers and Orc Fodder, so very cheap. Obviously, the Orc Fodder, the first unit at the very least, is free. And the Orc Maulers are very cheap Axemen, and the AP that they offer is very, very useful. Cheap Axemen in this game, particularly from the Orcs, who have them in great numbers, can be a very good way to bolster the damage of your front line, even if it is relatively cheap. And then he's got, I think, 2 units of Olag High here, so this is a big investment, but they are really battlefield juggernauts. With they do still have a somewhat derpy expression, but it's much more detailed and much more faithful to the trolls from the movie. Crimson Beverly really did a very good job with the trolls, I think. The Olag High in particular look very cool. And obviously very, very difficult to stop, very, very damaging, difficult to bring down. It really takes a lot of damage poured into them before they start to drop. And if they are left alone for too long, the damage they can cause to your army can be too severe to come back from. And obviously in a rush-focused Mordor army, which I assume Master Blaster is going to be extremely aggressive based on the amount of time this battle has, the Olag High are an integral part of that. And then further down here, just more fodder and maulers. He's got some more javelins here at the front, actually. So very cheap javelins, very similar to the Snaga skirmishers in many ways. Obviously, the amount of missile damage they do isn't overly impressive, neither is their accuracy. But it is very cheap armor-piercing missiles that you have access to, and provided they get into a good position, they are very easy to get cost efficiency from. Backing them up, we've got some Moran on Guard and some Moran on Halberds, so again, a combination of a relatively cheap spearman with the Moran on Halberds, which are part of a Mordor army most of the time. Halberdiers, that armor-piercing Phalanx, is very useful against the vast majority of factions, and across the way I believe it is Rune, so they might be going Halberd to Halberd with some Gamprin, which they would lose, but with support, proper support, Mordor can overwhelm opponents who rely too much on a frontal defence. And he's also got the Nazgul over here. So the Nazgul are going to be in this line over here, and they are going to be within all of this Moran on Guard and Moran on Halberdiers, so you know they're going to be fairly difficult to bring down right in the middle of this line. So we shall see how well they can do for themselves, and then it's just more Orc Javelins. So now we shall move on to the central player in the blue team, and it is going to be CPT Gervais, who is playing as Arthur Dayne. He's got his general. Actually, no, is this his general? This is not his general. But he does have the Knights of Iluminage nonetheless, obviously an incredibly powerful knight unit, mainly due to the fact that they're so difficult to bring down. I believe they are the most tanky of all the knights. The only other contender for that, I believe, would be the Camels Dragon Knights from Rune. But I believe the Knights of Iluminage take that crown home, and obviously knights in general are the kings of the open battlefield. Extremely, extremely powerful in the right hands. Obviously they can be brought down. Opponents will often try to focus them down because of how deadly they can be, but provided you use them wisely, the Knights of Iluminage will be extremely useful in this fight to use. On his front line, he's got 2 units of the Arthur Dayne Marksman without the armour upgrade, but even so, they will still make a cost-effective line archer, which should be able to trade relatively evenly with any skirmishers they come across. And obviously, you know, Arthur Dayne in general have got a lot of options when it comes to their skirmishers, and to increase their long-range potential, he's also brought a ballista, which, based on the composition of one of the enemy armies in particular, could prove to be very, very handy indeed. So the Ballista is going to be sat in the middle of the skirmish line here. And then the classic Dayne Phalanx is also going to be in effect. We've got the Evandin Spearmen with the Dayne Pikemen, the cheap spears, and the basic pikes together. It is a tried and tested combination which many Dayne players tend to use because you don't have to invest too much, and for the most part it will not steer you wrong. It will hold for a good amount of time and allow you to... It won't win you any fights necessarily because it's a very low amount of damage from the pikes and the basic spears, but they will hold the line long enough for you to win the battle elsewhere, which is the primary directive here for the Dayne Phalanx. So he's got them, and he's also got some Dunedain Peacekeepers on the sides. They obviously, as Dunedain, a little bit more similar to the elves, as I've said before, a little bit more of a focus around skill rather than armour, which is probably why the Dunedain Peacekeepers are brought so often and the Fornost Arraign Defenders are not, purely because that skill means they can actually fight against infantry with more effectiveness. Their lower armor value doesn't hurt them too much either, because they do still have a shield, and for the most part Arthedain can contest the skirmish fight to the point where their infantry shouldn't take too much of a battering anyway. Dunedain Peacekeepers over there. The General is of course in the Wardens of the North, so good to see the armor-piercing archer for Arthedain as well. They can obviously snipe out important key targets from the opposing team, and then when they're out of ammunition, as we've seen previously, they can be real tour de forces in melee as well when they pull out their longswords. And then finally at the back we have the Iluminage Gate Guards, very similar to the Wardens of Tir Gorthad from Cardlin. They make a very good thing to tie your line together, and often if you want to invest a little bit more in your Phalanx at the front line, then the Iluminage Gate Guards make a very good thing to base it around, because they obviously are just stronger variants of the standard Arthedain Pikemen, and they obviously have that inspiration aura as well. And then finally, for the blue team, once again we're going to see Rohan, and we're going to see Arcturus playing as them today. We've got the Aerid of Aldberg, which are not multiple HP, but they are the step below the multiple HP cavalry units from Rohan, so they are obviously the higher tier of standard lancers that Rohan can bring. A little bit more of an investment required for these guys than it is for the lower tier lancers, but provided you get the good charges off, they will be more than worth it. Obviously this is the thing with Rohan, they have a heavy focus around lancers, which means it's somewhat of a risk-reward dynamic with their cavalry when you go heavy on your lance cav, but for the most part a lot of Rohan players will bring a lot of horse skirmishers and foot skirmishers to make it very difficult to trade with them. And the Riders of the Fold are very strong as horse archers. There was a time back in vanilla when the Riders of the Fold were really not worth it at all, but now in Reforged they are, to my mind, one of the more cost-effective horse archers in the game. Definitely a very good choice here, particularly seeing as they are going to be going up against Lothlorien over there, who, you know, Rohan in terms of their skirmishers can simply overwhelm with sheer numbers against an elven faction. Over here we've got some Westmark Spearmen. In the upcoming 0.97 patch, the Spearmen are going to be getting a pretty substantial increase to their effectiveness against cavalry, which might make Rohan infantry builds a little bit more common, because as it stands, obviously, their lack of pikes is a pretty big deal for them. But now, the Westmark Spearmen should, well, in the future anyway, the Westmark Spearmen should be able to fill that void a little bit better than they can currently. And, you know, just generally, it will make Rohan's infantry builds a little bit more attractive. And I do feel as though Rohan's infantry builds don't get the credit they deserve. But the Westmark Spearmen are going to be here, holding down the flanks in a similar way to the Peacekeepers. Here on the front line, we've also got some Riddermark Spearmen, which are kind of like the happy middle ground between the Militia Spears and the Westmark Spears. So it does go to show that Rohan have a lot of spearmen, so certainly the upcoming 0.97 patch should be very kind to Rohan, even though it isn't focused around cav as such. More Riddermark Spears on the front line. Unsurprisingly, we've got some Helmingas as well. Obviously they are the slightly more expensive archer, but individually they are better. And Arcturus has gone for 2 units of these guys, so we're going to be skirmishing with the elves, which is a risky proposition, but provided you have the numbers, you can very easily do it. 2 units of Airwind Shield Maidens. Again, axe throwers also are going to be getting a bit of a change in the upcoming patch. They're going to have more base damage than javelins, but they will not have AP. So it's very much the trade-off, similar trade-off that you get between archers and crossbows. Only, no, not archers and crossbows, what am I talking about? I'm talking nonsense. But this will still make, because at the moment javelins and axe throwers are basically the same thing, so that will differentiate them somewhat. But for now, the Airwind Shield Maidens do still have their AP. But against Lothlorien, that's not really the most important thing anyway, the base damage is, and it'll be interesting to see, obviously, if they're kept in reserve until the late game, their damage could be very, very strong, but obviously the late game is not going to be too far away. We're already nearly in the final 10,000 frames before we even start. We've got the Ballista crew. You don't get to see these unit models too often, actually, because Rohan scarcely bring artillery. They have brought artillery this time, the ballista, which is going to make life a little bit difficult, a little bit uncomfortable for Lothlorien over there. As we saw previously, this is my favourite unit in Rohan, the Westmark Marshals, and they are going to be holding down the back lines over here in close proximity to their lower tier brethren, the Riddermark Axemen, obviously the green armour. Again, all of this AP won't help them too much against Lothlorien, but they could send them elsewhere on the battlefield, and even then the base damage and the charge bonus is still good. Westmark Spearmen holding down this flank, and then we have another strong point of Rohan's cavalry. Obviously, the general is going to be in the Sons of Yule, so that's another knight unit for this team. We've got more riders to the fold. We have got some Riddermark cavalry, which again are a slightly lower tier lancer than the Arid of Aldberg. And then we have a unit which has long been debated as being maybe a little bit too expensive for what it offers, but we have the Red Shield of Erkenbrand. They are archer cavalry, melee cavalry hybrids, which in theory sounds like a really winning combination. In practice, they are quite hit and miss, but we'll see if they do well today. Now we shall skip across to the other side of the field. We'll start off with Lothlorien, played by Tundra's Fox. He's got some Galathran riders. He does need to be pretty careful with these guys, however, because while individually they are substantially stronger than Rohan's horse archers that they've got, Rohan have got 3 units of horse skirmishers, which will be more than enough to overwhelm the Galathran riders, even with their multiple HP. Generally speaking, Lothlorien's numbers for their cavalry is their main weakness. Their cavalry itself, the 2 units they have access to, are both really, really good. But against Rohan, the numbers are going to be against them. 2 units of Lothlorien archers on the front line. Again, could be interesting to see how the skirmish fight goes against the Helmingast. They'll win 1-1, but with the addition of those Rohan horse archers as well, it could be a bit dicey. But they do also have some Ethel Tirith back here, as well as some Sindar archers. So actually, in terms of foot archers, they certainly have a clear advantage here. Maethir Laz Gallant as well, obviously very good to ward off enemy cavalry, spear, javelin hybrids. And then we've got some Sylvan Spears as well, obviously with the Karas Galadhon's Guardians in addition. They've got a lot of units which have anti-cavalry bonuses, which is unsurprising when you know you're facing off against Rohan. And then 2 units of Lothlorien Mounted Company Lance Cavalry, but with high skill. So 1-1, they beat the vast majority of Rohirrim Lancers. The Sons of Yule, of course, are going to be the exception to that. They would win. But even so, Rohan are going to need to be fairly careful, and based on their composition, they probably need to be pretty aggressive as well. We'll see. Now we move on to Harad, who have certainly put all their eggs into one basket. I think, yes indeed it is Froggy, he's gone for some Demons of the Desert. So he's gone basically, unless the unit is Uber tier, Froggy wasn't interested. He's got 2 units of Demons of the Desert over here, which are extremely powerful javelins. As we saw over here, he's also got his general in the Champions of Nathrat, so he's probably going to dive for cover in and amongst the Lothlorien formation. And then he's got 2 Mumakil. Obviously Mumakil, Battlefield Juggernauts, and as the blue team are probably going to be the primary aggressors here, the Mumakil could be a bit of a danger for them. And then finally over here, the final army, we have Baconfish 302 playing as Rune. He's got some Eastron Hunters along the front line, obviously cheap archers, but Mordor have not brought any skirmish presence, so the Orc intention is very, very good. Well, they've got the Orc Javelins, but close range skirmishers, so the Orc intention is very, very clear. And actually he's gone for some Variag mercenaries as well, so I do worry actually that Baconfish is overcommitted here on his skirmishers, because I don't think he's going to have the infantry to cover the entire width of his line, and Mordor could overwhelm, particularly seeing as he's gone for a heavy cavalry presence as well. He's got some Gamprim here on the front line, which might be able to hold them down long enough for the cavalry and the archers to do the damage they need to. Some Eastron clansmen with both levels of armour upgrades. We'll start off over here actually. We've got some Variag mercenary riders, so some more horse skirmishers, which is an interesting pick. It's going to be pretty chaotic this fight, I can tell already. Some Dragon's Wrath warlords, obviously multiple HP lancers, a little bit more of a focus around their armour and defence than something like what they call First Marshal's Bodyguard, or the Black Serpent Bodyguard, or the Royal Court of House Thorondor. Some Eastron clan chiefs, they are spear cavalry, so they've got the anti-cavalry bonus, although there's only 1 Mordor cavalry unit, so we'll see how useful that actually is. I believe this is the Runic General, indeed it is, in the Carmel's Chosen here at the back. We're going to see some chariot action as well with the Runic War Chariots, and we've got some more Eastron clansmen, Eastron clan chiefs, and Variag mercenary riders. So I can tell already that I'm going to be employing the slow-mo in this fight quite a lot as we begin. So Mordor, obviously, they need to attack quickly. It is an interesting dynamic, this, between all of these units. It's possible the Froggy's got some Hashari hidden away as well, based on the size of his army. But of course, Mordor right away are going to get right up into the face of Rune. try and punish them for the fact they've invested fairly heavily in their skirmishers, both on foot and on horseback. I do still worry that Rune has not got enough infantry to withstand this assault. And hello, we can see immediately there that the Eastron clan chiefs tried to charge, but you can see that the charge was a fairly broken one, and in the end it didn't really work out too well. In fact, I'm already going to turn down to half speed here. He tried to charge, and charging into trolls can work because that charge damage is fairly significant, but unfortunately his own men were in the way and only a few of the horses actually bolted, and this allowed the Olag High to do a ton of damage in return. You can also see that already the chariots got caught by the other unit of Olag High and are already getting a lot of damage done to them. They have actually managed to wriggle free of this, however, and right away we can see down here that there are already charges going into the Orc Javelins and the Eastron clan chiefs. When you're scrambling to charge across the field, you can miss some details, which you can be forgiven for. The Runic War Chariots are already going along the line into the Orc Javelins. The Orc Javelins getting a few hits off, and the Morannon Guard already coming forward. And that anti-cavalry bonus could be very useful against these Runic War Chariots, but slowing them down at this point is going to be fairly difficult for Master Blaster. But it's really up here where a lot of the damage is being done to Rune by the Olag High. This was the primary thing, really, I would say Mordor were counting on in this fight. When you invest this heavily in your trolls, you're asking them to do an awful lot of damage, and already the Runic Cavalry is actually on the defensive when they really wanted to be on the attack here, rear-charging all of this nice, squishy Mordor infantry units. As this is going on, however, we will skip across to the other side of the field as the Mumakil and the Lothlorien Mounted Company begin their assault, but we can also see over here that the Riddermark Cavalry getting a fairly decent charge here into both the Lothlorien Archers and the Lothlorien Mounted Company, but the Riddermark Cavalry definitely want to get out of there fairly quickly, because in a sustained fight they really don't stand a chance there. Speaking of which, however, tit for tat, as we see the Lothlorien Mounted Company also charging in here, but they have the backup of the Mumakil as well. However, the Eowyn Shieldmanes are in close proximity. Now, I don't believe they have the Throne trait, which would instantly kill the Mumakil, but they will still be capable of dishing out a hefty amount of damage really very, very quickly to the Mumakil. And what Froggy wants to do is get into these Eowyn Shieldmanes quickly to ensure that they can't throw. And you can see that loads of those axes managed to hit, bloodying up the Mumakil very quickly. And thanks to the fact they have 2 units, we should see the Mumakil start to drop, although this is still a problem for Rohan. Rohan is essentially having to hold Harad and Lothlorien in place long enough, because Arthur Dayne has gone to 2v1 Rune over here. And you can see over here already that the addition of the Knights of Iluminas charging into the Eastron Clansmen, doing a hefty amount of damage there. They do need to be careful of the Spear Cab to an extent, but the Knights of Iluminas would still win that one-to-one fairly easily. Here on the front line, the Morannon Halberds showing themselves to be inferior to the Loka Gamperim, which is unsurprising there. Where are the Nazgul? There's a lot of skirmish fire going all around. There's javelins going into the Runic Archers, there's fire arrows going into the Mordor Blob, which is substantial. And this is the problem with under-investing on your infantry when you're facing off against the Orcs, because there's always the danger that they're just going to go all-out attack on you. And at this point, Rune's line is falling apart. You know, they really don't have the numbers to withstand this, and while a lot of these units are fairly trashy, their formation has already been overwhelmed, and you can see here the Númenórean Lancers also in the action. The Olag High, however, have probably started to take substantial amounts of damage. I mean, there is a lot of Runic cavalry in close proximity, but now you can see that the Runic skirmish line is compromised. The Olag High getting in here, backed up by all of these Orc Maulers as well. At this point, if I was Baconfish, I'd probably cut my losses and try and save whatever cavalry I could and retreat over to my allies. Try and rely on the strength of the Mumakil to make up for the losses here so far. You can see these Orc Javelins still marching. And Mordor at this point, there's some routing. There is still some Runic infantry sort of loitering here in the middle, but you can see already that Arthur Dayne, some Dunedain Rangers and some Hobbits have also revealed themselves for Captain Gervais. And yeah, these Runic units over here, they definitely don't want to engage Arthur Dayne, because that's a full Arthur Dayne army against singular units, which would obviously go incredibly poorly. These Eastron Hunters over here, meanwhile, are certainly not the match of the Olag High in melee. Meanwhile, we'll skip back across to the other side of the field, and you can see that these Mumakils still making a nuisance of themselves behind the enemy lines, getting into the ballista as well. Arcturus definitely was the more sacrificial member of the blue team here, but he is still proving to be a little bit of a troublemaker, because, you know, as soon as Harad lose these Mumakil, they don't really have all that much left. And based on how Rune have been ganged up on the other side, the red team need to have a substantial victory over Rohan over here, which so far they're not actually being allowed to get... They will win, obviously, given time, but Rohan has definitely stood up to the onslaught of two armies better than Rune has on the other side. Meanwhile, you can see this Lothlorien Mounted Company with a nice charge there into the Helmingas, trying to rob Rohan of what's left of their skirmishers. And here we can see the Lothlorien Mounted Company following up for another charge. That unit of Mumakil over there is already making its way to the Rohan units, the Rohan cavalry units. Off to the flank over there. Arcturus trying to keep his cavalry at least alive so he can support his allies in the late game, presumably. Meanwhile, this Mumakil still right in and amongst it. The damage of the Axemen probably will land on the Mumakil, honestly, as well. Westmark Marshals as well, but this is still not good for Rohan, obviously. They've got Mumakil right in the middle of their army that they need to deal with, and they've also got the issue of the Lothlorien Mounted Company all in up in their lines as well, and this is going to be a nasty rear charge. Well, the Riddermark Axemen do turn around at the very least and try and get a counter charge off, but this is still going to be messy for them. They're the ones that are supposed to be giving the charge. That is their intended purpose, certainly not taking it. They still have Westmark spearmen here and there, but Rohan's still struggling quite a lot, especially now that the Mumakil are starting to rampage all over these lines. I'm actually surprised that Lothlorien has not moved forward to crush Rohan more in a faster manner, because the longer that they stay back there, Rune are still struggling an awful lot, naturally. Mordor, you know, Rune's army pick, I felt, played into Mordor's hands a lot. You know, they wanted to get involved in an elongated skirmish fight with Mordor, I think, which the Orcs can do with their number of skirmishers, but unfortunately for Rune, Mordor went for a much more rush-focused build, which when you go heavy on your archers is never a good thing, because you've never got the manpower to cover all of the angles that the enemy will be attacking you from. The Gamprim have held down this front line for a fairly long time, to be fair to them. There's also some dead trolls over here, which is impressive, although I imagine that was not just down to the Gamprim. Variag Mercenary Riders are still over here. There's still some runic fire arrows flying all around the place, but Rune's army is falling apart. Master Blast has actually got some units in reserve as well. There's one unit of halberds that he's got that are still fresh. Orc javelins actually routing from a little counter-attack here from Rune. Come on, there we go. Knights of Iluminage have actually taken some casualties, but provided they keep cycle charging, this unit of Eastron Clansmen is really not going to be able to do anything. Militia tier units are not the equal of knights, needless to say, and you can see that Arthur Dayne here have not really taken all that much in terms of losses. You can see some of Rohan's cavalry has actually been saved at this point, and I think Rohan are doing what Rune should have done. I feel as though you know, they are saving their cavalry, they are leaving their infantry behind essentially just as a sort of rearguard action to try and do what they can against the Mumakil and the marauding Lothlorien cavalry, but now Arthur Dayne are getting ready to set up a front line against what's left of the red team, which obviously consists mainly of Lothlorien because of Harad's very small army. And here we can see there's going to be another charge into these poor Eastron Clansmen, particularly with both levels of armour upgrades. They're very good for a militia tier unit, but this is not a fight that they... this is not something they signed on for. This was not their intended purpose. Or maybe it was, just as cannon fodder, but they certainly wouldn't have been told that. As the Knights of Iluminage just cripple these Eastron Clansmen. Meanwhile, let's go and have a look and see what's happening over here. Still madness. These Eastron Hunters actually have been allowed to fire for perhaps a little bit longer than they should have been. But even so, that's a very minor criticism of Mordor's advance, because with a rush, things tend to be pretty chaotic. You just push all your men forward, and other than a few basic things like focusing your strength on one side, like Master Blaster did here with Zolag High, there's really not much subtlety involved in it. And ultimately, for the most part, it was thoroughly successful. They are also receiving some support from Arthur Dayne in the shape of some hobbits. Evil hobbits. Some more javelins. There's still a few units here and there, but for the most part, Rune's army has been smashed. What's going on over here? Just some routing units. You can see that still Arcturus pulling his cavalry back on both flanks. Let's go and see what's the fate of his infantry is. There's actually a lot of dead Mumakil over here. The Mumakil's hit points were finally expended. These Lothlorien Mounted Company, they do need to be careful. They can't afford to linger too long in melee with high damage axemen, and there's also some spearmen over here as well. And I feel as though the red team at this point are probably starting to feel the pressure a little bit. What's that over there? Demons of the Desert have been revealed. They're also taking some fire from a ballista. But interestingly enough, Rohan are still going to have some infantry over here, I would imagine. This Mumakil unit is running amok. And I can only imagine it was the Eowyn Shield Maidens. The damage eventually must have told. The Lothlorien Mounted Company presumably are just going to continue to try and cycle charge. Try and kill off the Rohan infantry, because they definitely need to kill off the Rohan infantry. They can't afford to have enemies coming at them from two locations. Even if the Rohan force is minor, they need to focus all of their strength onto the front here to try and stop Mordor and Arthur Dayne, which honestly I'm not sure whether they can at this point. Investing in 2 units of Mumakil is a big investment. I'm not sure whether it's paid off here, because they would have needed to clean up all of this Rohan infantry to make that worth it. They do still have a unit of Mumakil, having said that. Go up to 1 speed for the time being. That Mumakil won't come back, even if it stops running amok. You lose control of Mumakil for good when they go crazy. Lothlorien Mounted Company over here. The addition of these Shield Maidens still making life difficult for Lothlorien here. Lothlorien archers here. Still some Helmingars, although they could be being used as bait here so that the Lothlorien Mounted Company comes back within range of the Shield Maidens. That charge didn't really connect as a result of the movement there. What's going on over here? The addition of the Mumakil over here. Is this 3 units of Mumakil that he brought? 56. 56. It could be 3 units of Mumakil that he brought. Which means there are still 2 units of Mumakil to deal with. The red shields are over here, trying to fire. There's still some runic units here and there. A single Olakai waddling into battle. But you can see here the Mumakil, even the mighty Knights of Iluminas will struggle when the Mumakil start waving their tusks around. But there's a lot of Mordor forces over here, and I can see what Froggy's probably thinking. There's some Rise of the Fold over here. Very similar to the Siege of Minas Tirith, a lot of Rohirrim horse archers trying to do damage to the Mumakil. But this is a lot of Mordor orcs, which are squishy targets for the Mumakil. They need to stay away from the Orc Javelins, however. The Mumakil have already taken a beating from the Eowyn Shield Maidens. Last thing they need is more Javelin fire. Some Grey Company over here as well from Arthur Dayne, which actually I haven't noticed up until now. But they have been skirmished down pretty ruthlessly. This Mumakil trying to do what damage it can, but it doesn't really have any support over here. It's all on its own. Some Arthur Dayne marksmen who are dealing some hefty damage to the Demons of the Desert. This was very bold of Froggy to put his Demons of the Desert front line and centre with Arthur Dayne of all factions. With their rangers, with their marksmen, with their ballistas, and now with their knights. And I feel as though this is probably the final nail in the coffin for the red team's hopes in this fight. Let's just turn the speed down here, because I can see on the mini-map that there are other things going on as well. The Mumakil doing some hefty damage here. But again, it's only to stuff like Arthur Dayne Pikemen and Heavendim Spearmen. They need to be hitting critical targets at this point. This unit of that Mumakil there did get into the Rangers, which is good. There are some Nazgul over here as well. The Mumakil's starting to drop though. That is the problem. You know, when in sustained melee, the pikes will still do substantial damage to them. There are still Olakai, there are still Númenórean Lancers. There's so much over here that Froggy is having to try and deal with. But finally over here it looks as though Tundra's Fox is moving in for the kill, I think. Are they? Well, the Champions of Nathrat are fighting off against these Rohirrim units over here, some Westmark Spearmen and some Westmark Marshals. And the Champions of Nathrat, based on the damage the Rohirrim have already taken, should actually win that. Especially, well, those are spears? Maybe. It would be very close. I'm very surprised. Where are Lothlorien? Lothlorien are over here. Presumably they're going to move in for a final stand here. Try and die in melee at the very least. Ethel Tirith over here. Yeah, we may as well go up to 1 speed at this point. Here we can see the Mumakil rapidly starting to drop. There's Lancers, there's Trolls, there's Pikes, there's all sorts around them just being overwhelmed at this point. And also the Wardens of the North. Although, that was the Dunedain Troll Slayers, I think, which they might have the Throne trait. They are multiple HP javelins, I'm not sure. The only units I know for sure are the Custom Reclaimers, the Demons of the Desert, and the Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen. Some Galathan Riders over there. There goes the Runic General at long last, at the hands of the Hobbits, no less, as well. Again, there's very little that the Galathan Riders can actually do at this point in time. And they're just being attacked from range by foot archers as well. And now you can see here, Mordor charging across the field. Oh, shot in the back there by the Eowyn Shield Maidens. And that was, I believe, the Champions of Nafarat. And you can see over here, yeah, that is the end of the Champions of Nafarat. Lothlorien archers, Sindar Blade Masters have revealed themselves, but honestly at this point the Rohan infantry will almost, well, they'll probably be victorious actually. At the very least, this Lothlorien infantry will not be looking too healthy afterwards. Riddermark Spearmen, Rohan infantry trying to regroup to meet the charge of these two units of Sindar Blade Masters. Want to be careful of that Mumakil that's still running amok. Here we can see some Númenórean Lancers from Mordor. Trying to charge into the Sindar Blade Masters, not really able to connect too well, however. What's going on over here? You can see Lothlorien trying to retreat. They do still have a lot of strong units, but at this point, Lothlorien are basically having to deal with all three of the opposing armies still. There are the Westmark Spears. And I think, again, this goes to show that the Rohan infantry is not to be taken lightly. They were in a situation which they really had no right to dig themselves out of, and yet here they are, still alive, still proving to be a thorn in the side of the opposing team. The Lothlorien forces are coming over here now, but these Númenórean Lancers charging in there to the Lothlorien Mounted Company. That would be an interesting fight to behold, although I do think the Lothlorien Mounted Company with that elven skill would probably pull that out. Although with the support of these Riddermark Spears, that's a different matter entirely. Look at the Orcs just pouring forward. There's still the Rohan cavalry in the backfield as well. Whatever happened to the Galathan Riders? Galathan Riders? Well, they're still alive. Although, to be honest with you, the Arthedain skirmishers can just pick away at them at their leisure. Here are the Band of Brass Archers in point blank as well, absorbing all the arrow fire from the Galathan Riders. And now you can see, obviously, the Knights of Annúminas not actually in too good a shape at this point. But just chasing the Galathan Riders all around the battlefield. And now you can see, obviously, the Mordor Orcs getting in. The Olag Kai are here, going after the Karos Galaton's Guardians as well, which is not a bad move. The Olag Kai's damage will drain those HP very, very fast, although to be fair, the Olag Kai, a lot has been asked of them thus far in this fight, and slowly but surely they are starting to falter. But at this point, surely Lothlorien don't have enough to cover every angle from this onslaught, this joint Arthedain Mordor attack. And there's still the matter of the Rohirrim as well to deal with. I mean, at this point, the Staff Masters which have revealed themselves. At this point, the Rohan infantry is little more than a distraction. You can see there's a lot of routing going on. But there's still a presence over here, which is still a problem. The Eowyn Shield Maidens are still alive. But the Sindar Blade Masters are slowly but surely mulching their way through the Westmark Spears. Those axes still flying in there to the Lothlorien Mounted Company. I can only assume it was the Lothlorien Mounted Company which polished off the Rohan infantry this quickly. But at this point, the charge of the Rohirrim is on. All of these Rohan horses charging there into the Maitha Ir Lasgellan, the Lothlorien Mounted Company, and more Maitha Ir Lasgellan. Riders of the fold there. Not a big charge, obviously, on the horse archers, but at this point, it's all about just occupying all of these elven skirmishers. Still the Sons of Yorl as well, a relatively healthy knight unit at this point in the game, is something which is really, really difficult to deal with. Huge charge there, just crushing so many of those Lasgellan underfoot. All of these skirmishers trying to halt the advance here of the Rohirrim cavalry. The Aerid of Aldberg getting a nice charge there into the Maitha Ir Lasgellan as well. Not quite as telling as the Sons of Yorl's, but Riddermark cavalry just cycling in and out. It's like a wave-based charging system here that Arcturus has got going on. And when one unit is cycling out, one unit is cycling in. And obviously, no rest for the weary from an elven perspective because the Orcs are beginning their assault. A lot of lower tier units from both Arthedain and Mordor here, but there are simply too many here for Lothlorien to deal with, surely. These Sylvan Staff Masters trying to break up this advance. There are Wardens of the North on hand. There are so many Orcs. There's still an Olag High just running around. Dunedain Peacekeepers as well. Galathrun Riders still on the periphery, but at this point it's not going to be enough. Sindar Blade Masters trying to deal with what's left of the Rohan infantry. Karas Galadhon's Guardians, obviously from the front. There's scarcely a more scary unit in the game when they've got their Phalanx down, and you have to deal with them in melee. But as it is, they will not be afforded the luxury of only having their foes come at them from one direction. Lothlorien Archers obviously still having to deal with the Rohan Cavalry. Sindar Archers having to deal with more Olag High. The Red Shields still a presence here in the late game, not the easiest unit to bring down either. Obviously as melee Cav and Horse Archers not focused around their charge damage. The Sons of Yhorl have taken more damage, presumably from arrow fire and javelins, but they're still here, still charging in, pulling out their axes, doing damage to the Sindar Archers with the support of the Trolls. And this Rohan Cavalry has, again, there's still some Maitha Ilaz Gallen back here, but they again take another charge, this time from the Red Shields. Maitha Ilaz Gallen killing off these Riders of the Fold in melee, but they're having to deal with Dunedain Peacekeepers now as well, and the Dunedain, they don't shirk in terms of their skill values either. Arthedain Pikemen finishing the surround on the Karas Galadhon's Guardians, even if it is only with Orcs. Galathrun Riders having to once again run away from the Knights of Iluminas. What have we got going on over here? Iluminas Gate Guards finishing off the Sindar Blade Masters, which they finally managed to chase off all of the Rohirrim, but the Nazgul and the Iluminas Gate Guards were their only reward, and then they got slaughtered. More Orc fodder just running around. And Lothlorien's days most certainly are numbered. All of this Rohan cavalry. It was good to see Rohan's cavalry there in the late game with those nice layered charges. Layered defences I'm not a big fan of, but layered charges like that, very well organised that by Arcturos, very nice to see. Karas Galadhon's Guardians, still victory seems certain, even though they're fighting back to back. Although the Dunedain Troll Slayers are about to ruin their day, I would think. There's plenty more forces they're going to have to fight anyway. They will be the last Elven unit standing, of that I've little doubt. There we go. Only a few of them are actually able to fire based on the angle they have. Dunedain Rangers coming in. The Rohan horses scattering to the four winds. Orc fodder just idling. That's pretty much it. Yeah, that is the only units remaining, pretty much. I don't think there is anything else on the field. The Galathrun Riders are still alive. No, they're routing. And it's just the Karas Galadhon's Guardians here in the final phases. But here we can see that quantity is going to beat quality in this case, when the numbers are so skewed. And the final results are, the percentages very nicely in favour of the blue team, but this was a good fight to behold. I feel like the difference here, the blue team really organised themselves very, very well. They worked in tandem very nicely, and I think ultimately actually what's going on here? They're going to let the Sons of Yhorl get the final charge? Or are they just retreating all of these Arthedain units? I'm not sure. Oh, Sylvan Spears. Dunedain Troll Slayers coming in as well. Yeah, this is obviously going to be the end. Will they break here? Or will he admit defeat? Nah, he admitted defeat. Well, they probably wouldn't have lasted much longer anyway. Maybe 1 or 2 more kills at the most would have been Tundra's Fox's only reward. Very well played by the blue team though. Unsurprisingly, Master Blaster got the most kills, but then that is because he was fighting off against the army that had substantially the most from the red team, and he finished them off pretty quickly. Arcturos getting the least, but then again he was the one being 2v1'd. And I think the most telling thing in this fight was the fate of Rune and Rohan. Rune, they had to face a 2v1 situation, at least for the most part. I mean, it is worth saying that Arthedain sort of didn't commit too many forces to help, but, Harad, they committed their Mumakil to help against Rohan. Arthedain committed their cavalry to help against Rune. And the fate of Rune, they were very poorly equipped to deal with the situation that was before them. I feel as though it wasn't really Baconfish's fault so much, because really it was his composition that defeated him. He just didn't have the tools to deal with an Orc rush. I think he was expecting Mordor to have brought more in terms of archers, expected a more drawn out fight with the Orcs, and in the end that was not what he got. He got a rush, and he was overwhelmed by that, in addition to some Arthedain support. On the other side of the battlefield, however, Lothlorien and Harad did not finish off Rohan with the same impunity. They did not finish off Rohan at all, really. Rohan's cavalry gave them pause, I think. Lothlorien didn't want to commit their infantry while Rohan's cavalry was worrying their backlines. And ultimately the Mumakil had to be sent in largely without support. The only support they had was from the Lothlorien Mounted Company. And in the end, that was not enough to finish off the Rohan infantry quickly enough. And obviously that meant that when Mordor and Arthedain came across triumphant, they didn't have enough resources to deal with that. And Froggy tried. He tried to break up the charge with the Mumakil, with his Demons of the Desert, but in the end, I feel as though Froggy's composition didn't really help him out either. There are situations where 3 Mumakil units can be a very devastating thing, but in this case, nah, the blue team had their bases covered from that perspective, and in the end, Tundra's Fox was left with very little to do other than to just be overwhelmed. He did get the singular most amount of kills in the game, as the elves tend to do in this sort of situation, to be fair, but in the end, that was not enough. Let's see what did the damage from Mordor, though. 3 units of Olag High, actually, rather than 2, so that was a big investment, obviously, in the Olag High, but it paid off. Only 1 unit got below 100 kills, the other 2 got above 200. A lot of kills there. The Nazgul, obviously, no casualties sustained. They were always a bit more of an insurance policy, I think, in case they had to fall back on a more grindy fight, and they did okay for themselves. The Orc Javelins, considering how cheap they are, they did just fine. The rest, obviously, the Moran-on Halberds and Moran-on Guard, not doing too well. The Númenórean Lancers, however, doing okay as well. So yeah, good teamwork there from the blue team. The red team, I feel as though more than anything they were defeated by the compositions they chose to bring. But also I want to give the blue team credit here. They worked in tandem really very, very well. And I want to give a special amount of credit there to Arcturos for making life very difficult in that 2v1 situation for both Lothlorien and Harad. Using his cavalry to make sure that Lothlorien couldn't just charge in and overwhelm. Using his shield maidens to deal impressive amounts of damage to the Mumakil. But just in general, the blue team did very well. Very well executed rush from Mordor, and good support play from Arthedain, ensuring that they always had the numbers to deal with whatever situation arose. So yeah, that was a very fun battle to behold, actually. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next, which, I don't know, I'm thinking of mixing it up a little bit. I'm sort of making a few plans to do a few things that aren't necessarily battle replays, getting into a few more unit-based things again. But we'll see about that. I mean, I'm still sort of in the early stages of trying to figure that out. We'll see. Regardless, hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.